8 of the remaining hostages set to be released by Hamas in the first phase of a ceasefire agreement with Israel are dead. That's according to an Israeli government spokesperson. The rest of the 33 hostages who were expected to be returned from Gaza to their families are alive. David Mensa said in a briefing, including 7 who have already been returned. Israeli authorities were notified of the hostages' status after receiving a list from Hamas. According to Mensa, the 8 dead were killed by Hamas. The Palestinian militant group has not commented on their cause of death. The first phase of the Gaza ceasefire and hostage release deal, which started on January 19, will see dozens of hostages taken captive by Hamas and other armed groups in the October 7 attacks being freed. Israel will also release almost 2,000 Palestinian prisoners in the first part of this agreement. Well, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians continue to stream into Gaza's most heavily destroyed area on Tuesday, a day after Israel opened the north for the first time since the early weeks of the war with Hamas, a dramatic reversal of their exodus. Joyous crowds of Palestinians, some holding babies or pushing wheelchairs, walked along a seaside road all day and into the night, carrying bedrolls, bottles of water and other belongings. Armed and masked Hamas fighters flashed a victory sign. The crowd was watched over by Israeli tanks on a nearby hill. The United Nations said more than 200,000 people were observed moving north Monday morning. Palestinians who have been sheltering in squalid tent camps and former schools are eager to return to their homes, even though they are likely damaged or destroyed. Many had feared that Israel would make their displacement permanent. All right, and for more on this development, International Affairs Analyst Dr. Marek Laskiewicz joins us from London. Marek, glad to have you join us. Interesting, we're seeing hordes of Palestinians return to their homeland. What more can you tell us about their return? I got a 200,000 long walk back home.
It is indeed a long walk back home. The houses are ruined, of course, the places where they lived. So the long walk is just the start of a long, I feel like, journey, in the sense they'll have to rebuild. This is the key point now of when we can start rebuilding, is what presumably they're saying. And this is, in fact, what is going to be another part of the negotiations, not with Israel, but to get aid in the sense of rebuilding, not just food or medicines from other countries. This, of course, already is under discussion, but the question is how quickly can they start?
You've actually gone ahead of me. Who and who will be involved in this rebuilding process, and how is the food aid? Have they started trickling in, guessing in? Are there blockades or barriers or hindrances?
Well, the food aid is arriving far more than before. So to that extent, the hindrances, their usual bureaucratic snarl-ups, are of minor importance now. The key point isn't any more food or medicines, because there is arriving an adequate amount. The key point is who can start the rebuilding process. Rebuilding not just buildings, but the entire infrastructure, of course, the services, the electricity. And here there are, of course, 3 obvious candidates: other Arab states, the USA, and the EU. And what should be done now is they should be coordinating or working out who can do what, because obviously the longer nothing happens in this situation, the worse, again, the plight of the Palestinians becomes. The rebuilding is the key now.
I was just wondering, most of their houses, I mean, the place is a mess, it's a total wreck. And I was wondering, yes, they're happy to go back home, but where are they going to stay? I mean, are there camps or makeshift coverings? I was just wondering.
Yes, as far as I know, that is precisely what they're going to have, tents or makeshift coverings. It'll do. Fortunately, it's not that cold there. I mean, if it was, for example, Scotland, to name one place, or Canada, that would be another matter altogether. But it's warm, people can sleep even in ruins. And as for rebuilding, people have rebuilt before. It's not an impossible task. It's, of course, time consuming, takes money, takes effort, but it can be done. The key point is to coordinate this as quickly as possible.
Well, Trump, I'm smiling because Trump made this suggestion. He's asking that Egypt and I think one or two other nations Palestinians should move from their land, and Egypt should, Jordan, okay, and should take them. And I listened to one of the Palestinians say, we're not going anywhere. This is our land. We're going to stay here. Even Egypt, and they've immediately refused it. What do you make of Trump's comment?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because it can be read two ways, and I'm entitled to give him, rather, I think, the beneficial way. He is an American. For him, a demolition site is not where you can stay. I mean, he's a rich American on top of that. And it's quite possible his comments were nothing more than an indication of that. In other words, as in California, people don't live in the bits which were damaged. They went to hotels, they went to other people's houses. And this is how he, I think, sees it. There is, of course, a more sinister, if you like, interpretation, although, as I said, I'm prepared to give him the benefit of the doubt, and namely that, of course, this is would be an ethnic cleansing operation in effect, or self-cleansing to be exact, because if they don't go back, then they may be left out of Palestinian forever. And this is, of course, what the Palestinians were referring to, what is their fear, that, of course, they won't be allowed back. And in the name of living in a slightly better place, they will lose their houses and their rights to property there forever. The Palestinians, for their part, are of course quite prepared to put up with difficult conditions. They're not the only people in the world who have done so, but it can be done. Other nations have done this, and I anticipate they're going back and rebuilding as best they can. And so therefore, his comments, although they do agree with the Israeli right, I think are based on a different principle. And I don't think we should read into this that he supports any sort of ethnic cleansing.
All right. Well, some of the Palestinians who are glad, they are glad actually because they were thinking that Israelis won't allow them to get back into their homeland. But before I let you go, where are we now, the implementation of the first phase of the deal? I hear mediators are already starting preliminary work on the second stage, which is supposed to kick off sometime next week. Marek.
Yes, the reason why the mediators are starting already is obviously they want to hit the ground running. And so when the talks open, everything has to be ready for them to go ahead. So this is, if you like, an administrative function that they're carrying out now. But what is important is they're also, politically speaking, signaling to both Israeli and Palestine that they should go ahead with phase two, that it is going to go ahead and talks will happen. That is what they're also signaling by this prior work. The other important aspect to it is that so far the deal between Palestine and Israel has held up. And the next stage of hostages releasing and prisoners is, of course, the one we're looking at now. But far more important today, the Gazans were able to go back. And as you said, quite rightly, many of them are very happy to be back on their bit of land.
So much we watch as events unfold. And of course, the hope of the whole world is that peace will eventually be permanent in that area of the world. Thank you so much, Dr. Marek Laskiewicz, there speaking to us from London on issues that have to do with Palestinians returning to their homeland of Gaza. Thank you.